Roberto, we're going to start with you. Tell us what you've been doing, because you've personally been very inspiring to me, the work you've been doing, what you've been able to accomplish in your backstory. Just for people who aren't familiar, what have you been up to at Cornerstone Craftsman?
A lot. A lot. Well, let me just define what Cornerstone Craftsman is, and then we'll get into the backstory. Cornerstone Craftsman is a whole person, unique service delivery model that starts with an individual who likely isn't going to college and connects them directly to a registered apprenticeship program where they can earn high wages right out of high school, with everything taken care of, from work-ready documents to a valid driver's license, and also considering things like the benefits cliff for those who live under Section 8 housing and things like that. I myself am a small business owner. Several years back, I thought to myself, wow, if I had only knew what I knew now, I'd be worth, I can't even tell you how many millions. But I didn't hear those kind of things when I was going to school. I didn't hear you can make $175,000 as a master electrician and you can start earning as soon as you're out of high school. So the way I tell the story is I was legitimately writing a proposal to a client for a project, and it was like the hand of God touched me. My mind shut off. I stopped doing what I was doing, and all of a sudden had started connecting all the trauma that I had been through growing up and also my business experience to the idea that I could time travel and save myself, but not save myself, save other kids that grew up like me. And thank you. And give them, access in ways that traditional models don't necessarily get it right doing. It could be the school system. It could be workforce programs in the city. It could be other nonprofits. In fact, I spent several years self-funding this initiative with my own money. I converted it to a nonprofit because I all of a sudden started training 5 kids and taking them into people's homes to paint rooms and telling them they had a job, even though we were doing it for free and I was paying them. They didn't know that, but they told all their friends they had jobs. So next thing I knew, I had more kids to employ than I possibly could. And that went on for several years, kind of navigating nonprofit circles, which I had no idea what even a nonprofit was, but quickly realized that if I was going to do this right, it wasn't bouncing people around from place to place. It was centralizing resources geared at the individual, giving them everything they would need to not fail and produce the highest return on investment. So that's a little bit about what I do and who I am.
Amazing. And I got to tell you, please go visit Cornerstone Craftsman. If you go over there, you will see there's a washer and dryer in case the kids have dirty clothes and they don't have anywhere else to wash them. I'm going to start crying, so we won't talk anymore about it. I encourage you to go see it for yourself and see what's happening with these young people, thanks to Roberto. Derry, Roberto's doing amazing work. And there are others also, as you saw that landscape assessment, that are really committed to making an impact. How do we scale this? How do we get more funding for this? I know you've been a pivotal partner with Roberto, so just give us a little bit about that.
Thanks, Amanda. Great to be here. Thank you, Captivate and Virginia Tech. Go Hokies. My daughter's a sophomore there in landscape architecture. I'm a consultant in fundraising, and about 3 years ago, I met Roberto. I spent a good bit of time talking to the community to find out where I could insert myself in a meaningful way in vulnerable communities. And I knew the first hour I met Roberto, there's some potential here, real potential. And we're still together. I've been a mentor, a volunteer, a donor, an advisor to Cornerstone. Our first year as a nonprofit, we raised $500,000, cash in kind. And there's more work to do. In fact, we could scale to 5 million and we would know where to put that money and make that investment and grow. Luckily, all kinds of funders want to fund Cornerstone. Obviously, Roberto has a very compelling story. So the trades industry, real estate, individuals, family foundations, all fund the organization, and workforce, and particularly paid youth apprenticeship is obviously people are realizing what a need there is, and Roberto is a real innovator in the space. As you heard, he's working with kids 12 to 17, and he and his organization, is really working with the whole human being, not just the skills, but everything that a youth needs to be able to truly move into the workforce at age 18 and find a viable career and a livable wage and address, poverty and be able to move that family and community out of poverty. Did I answer your question?
Yes, that's good for starters.
Excellent. I'm going to hand it to my gentleman.
So hand it there to Will. Will, tell us a little bit about Maryland Service Year Option. Obviously, I know you're the AI guy from Build Within Talent Capital. Ooh, so sometimes everyone's like, the bad guy with AI, but you've got an interesting backstory too about how you started, which adds some authenticity to now being the tech guy. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, definitely. So big shout out to this event being in Alexandria, a neighborhood where I literally grew up 5-10 minutes away from here. I grew up in Arlington, Virginia, actually right next to Gunston Middle School. Went to Wakefield, stayed in Arlington, went to Marymount University. So sorry, Virginia Tech, I'm not going to give you a shout out. But no, this is very personal for me. So Build Within, we're a modern workforce technology company that provides services and technology to help modernize the workforce system. Now that's a mouthful. Basically, when you walk into a career center or when you walk into an American Job Center and you're looking for services, most times there's a person behind that that's doing that work. What a lot of folks don't know is that the person behind that is using an antiquated system, sometimes even a black screen with like green font, that's like trying to figure out what are the best services that you can get as a person. The reality of it is that technology has advanced so much more than that. And so the reason why this is personal is because when I graduated Wakefield, I was an HVAC tech. I was an HVAC tech for 2 years. I was an apprentice for Maryland for a company. And I remember going through the workforce system and being like, why am I being herded around from one place, dropping off a clipboard, putting another place, talking to a person, and then asked to come back 2 days later to verify if my documents are eligible. And that always stuck with me. Started another company, sold it, and we started Build Within. And I remember thinking to myself, like, there's an automated way to do this. And a way that we can do that is using AI to make that happen. And so we started with registered apprenticeship programs. And, something that I'm very proud of, and big shout out to Dave, who's in the room from the Alexandria Arlington Workforce Board, but Council, we had a chance to talk, and I remember asking him, like, what are the challenges that are happening here? How do we solve and address these problems? How do we do this? And we started with registered apprenticeship programs, and then we had an opportunity in Maryland to actually work with the Maryland Department of Service and Civic Innovation, which is another mouthful. I'm just going to say DSEI for short. But they run the Maryland Service Year and Maryland Core program, an amazing program where if you're a high school student that graduates and don't have a 2 or 4 year school you're going to, they'll connect you with the Maryland employer, and then you get registered as an apprentice in that occupation. About 90% of the students are called members. 90% of those members are being placed with those employers as a registered apprentice. So that means there's a framework for learning and there's a framework for gaining the skills, which is amazing because imagine you graduate high school and you don't go to college. By show of hands, how many of you went to college right out of high school? How many of you know someone that did not go to college? And do you remember those conversations when they were like, what am I going to do? I feel like I'm being left out. Imagine having that same feeling, but not having a structured learning environment. So that's the Maryland Service Year program. Now we're going to dig in a little bit deeper, but really it's focused on giving people an opportunity, a little bit of hope that, you can gain the skills and still be okay.
Yeah, and what I appreciate most about that, and here, Roberto, you can take the mic that works best, is the scaling that's needed with AI, because it might take that to get the people we want. And Roberto, that's what I wanted to talk about. You shared some amazing success stories like Gabe and some of these young people that I'm telling you, he's got videos on his phone, texts on his phone. These young people look up to him, admire him. They're sending him these amazing stories. They're so proud of this work. What, tell us a little bit about that. And also, what do you see as the barriers to scaling to do more of the amazing work you're doing?
Well, I'll tell a story about Gabe. So Gabe is one of our last year graduates whose parents were having some challenges when they thought they were going to have to self-deport and he was going to have to take on custody of his younger sister. How is he going to get health insurance for? How is he going to provide, to pay rent and food? And he's now with the IBEW making like $27.50 an hour, full benefits, pension, 401k, 18 years old, can put his younger sister on his benefits and take care of her. And I think the challenge with scaling, one thing that I had the opportunity to do that many people don't is take risks, because I was using my own money, right? And I wasn't using government resources, so I didn't have to deal with the bureaucracy, which saved me a lot of time. So just being honest. I think that the challenge to scaling, because there's a couple things here, right? So we're talking about career placement, but we're also talking about people's lack of data when it comes to attrition rates. What happens after you place a person at an apprenticeship? What happens after you place them in a career path? Do they have what they need to make that sustainable for the rest of their life? And I think that the issue with scaling is making sure that whatever model you use, you're building it with the community and with the industry simultaneously, because we have a nasty habit of forming programs and trying to force them on whoever we're trying to serve without their input, right? We have, for instance, we may have some industry partners in this room, but how many people are in need of that opportunity at that industry that can be here right now having the conversation with us actively to say, hey, what do I need? How do I get it? How do I get connected? It's about having the right people in the room. Also, it's about having a credible messenger. I am not a laid off federal worker, but if I was and I could relate to the people I'm trying to serve and I've developed a pathway, making sure that you have that credible messenger part of the design process with the people that need to be served. I think we overlook that. I think that we rely on data and we say, oh, look, here's this, but you peel back a layer and then you realize it's not what you think it is just by looking at it. I've seen that more times than I can tell you. And I think it's time to start having those conversations honestly. Other than that, the challenge with scaling is identifying the industry need in that locality that pays a livable wage, and having honest conversations in regards to who we're gearing them. Let's use the federal workers, for example. Livable wage here is whatever it is, but that person might have been making $175,000 a year. How do you convince that person to now accept a livable wage? There's a trade-off. So one, it's having the right people in the room. Two, identifying the industry need in that locality, and then working with the industry to build relationships and networks so where they're not over-promising guaranteed employment, but you're having enough conversations based upon the personal relationships you build with them to say, hey, if I get this person up to this level, will you give them a shot, right? So that's what I think the challenge is.
I love that. And I love that you're so focused on the job at the end, because how many of us know about programs and trainings, and there's so much upskilling, especially when it comes to AI. Oh my goodness, we could all get certified, right? And I have the best of intentions. I sign up for it and then I never do it. But is that going to get them a job on the other side?
Well, not only that, we are expecting that somebody has the liberty to come and do something for free. That's also part of the problem. They need to be able to get their basic needs met as it's developed, right? And that's something that I think we can do through smart incentives with and offsetting costs through partnerships between the school system, local government, private sector, nonprofits. But the issue is, and I'm sure many people in here have been through this, it's the silos. We work in silos, especially now when there's competition on a federal level for resources because funding's drying up. And it becomes about organizational sustainability rather than helping people. And I'll just say the reason I've been able to get so far is because when I was doing this, I was self-funding it, not to turn it into something that could make money. It was because I was trying to solve an issue. And if we're not focused on how to solve the issue for the sake of just solving the issue, we're always going to run into problems.
Well said. Will, I'd like you to kind of tag on to that to talk a little bit more about Maryland Service Year option and specifically because I know they get paid, and that's such an important part to ensure people are paid, because not everyone is privileged and has the ability to do unpaid internships or get mom and dad to give them that great in at a company somewhere. Not everybody has that, and we need to acknowledge that reality. And then, well, I'd love you to share too about Courtney's success story that you shared with me.
Yeah, definitely. So the Maryland Service Year program, the inception of it came from Governor Westmore. So during his campaign, he promised a service year component to the work that he was going to do as governor for the state of Maryland. Great initiative. And I'm sure that on one hand, he was hearing from families where they were saying, my kid's about to graduate high school. I don't know where they're going to work. And on the other hand, he's probably hearing from employers and they're saying, well, we need people. Where are the people? We don't have enough people to work at our jobs. And so came up with Service Year. Now, Service Year by nature is like AmeriCorps, right? It's an opportunity for people to do a service project. The service component of this is working with Maryland employers. The great component about this is that those individuals are paid while they're doing the service. And that opens up the door for communities that otherwise would not have that opportunity to do that. One piece about this, and the reason why we've been able to scale together, is because, the Maryland Service Year program and the Maryland Core program, they're using AI to do a lot of the matching. I don't know about you all, but I remember, and we still do this, where you're looking at a resume for somebody, you're looking at the employer and the job posting, you're talking to the employer, and you as an individual are trying to make that connection between the person and the job and trying to convince the employer that this works, right? Now, try doing that 1,000 times. Try doing that 2,000 times. It's not scalable by person unless you have actual dollars to help hire hundreds of people to do that in a really good, consistent way. And so what we did is we brought technology to that. So we have an AI agent that actually has a conversation with that person. That person fills out an application. That AI agent then validates and assesses the skills and experiences of that person, looks at the jobs that are available and makes the match to that employer to do that. And this is going to be a little controversial, but we look at it from a different lens, which is we want the employer to feel good about making that match, not so much the other way around, right? So the employer logs in, sees all of these candidates, what their match score is, can see why that person is eligible or a great fit for their organization, and then start doing the interviews with them. There's a human component of that because there's people who are there to support those people, but there's no person that is saying, hey, employer, here's 17 resumes, make a decision on either one of these 17 people. The other side of that is that this has been so successful that I remember the first year that we did this, we were on the ground trying to get some more information about the people that we were connecting. And I met a young lady, her name is Courtney. Courtney was super nervous about this, had never done an interview, and we were coaching her through that process, right? This is before we launched the AI agent to have conversations with folks. And I remember she's like, I can't do this. I don't know if I can do this. And I remember sitting in her seat myself and thinking like, you can do this. It's fine. We coached her. I remember her mom called me and was like, why are you telling my daughter that she can do this? She's super nervous. Are you sure? So I was like, oh, it's going to be okay. Courtney's mom, like, it's perfectly fine. But anyway, she ended up getting matched with BG&E, the Baltimore Gas and Electric utility company in Maryland. And so now she's a program manager there and she manages people. She's been there for 3 years, going on her third year. It's an incredible story as someone who did not have an opportunity goes in and finds a perfect match. That match then sees the potential in her. There's a framework for learning and gaining the skills. She becomes very successful and she's still there. That's an amazing story. We wanted to replicate that thousands of times. And that's why we believe at Build Within, the technology is a way to do that without removing the human, but making those tasks that are low value, high volume, obsolete and manual and autonomous. So people can actually focus on the high value, high touch services that are really important, which is actually talking to the person, coaching them, giving them the best support to prepare for those opportunities.
Amazing. And Derry, I want to give you the last word before we have Q&A. So please start thinking what you'd love to ask about these amazing programs. Derry, you've heard from both Will and Roberto, and you obviously know Roberto, worked with him for a while. You've seen the impact, you've seen the results, you know what's going on. What are the funders looking for when they say, yes, I want to invest in this? Like, what is it that you think is most important to share with them? Is it data? Is it stories? Is it ROI? Is it, you're the expert on the fundraising side. And obviously, oftentimes money is what we need to scale in addition to maybe technology.
Thanks. Great question. Program is number one priority. They want to see quality, quantity. They'd like to see more youth going through the program, and they want to know what happens when they're done. Luckily, we've been able to get a good bit of unrestricted funding, and that really allows a responsible nonprofit to be most impactful, be most efficient, is be able to use it where the acute needs are. So We've been able to scale pretty quickly with 2 apprentice youth groups and through in-kind space, a classroom and a workshop. But Roberto's program is scalable. And I think that any type of funder, particularly government funding, we prepared ourselves with our grant writing team to be able to pursue state and federal funding. And that's where the real scalability comes to go up into the multiple millions. And obviously data and seeing that the youth are actually checking the boxes, but also being treated as a whole person to be able to stay in the program and continue on. Those are the big thing funders want to see.
That's great. You want to add to that?
Well, yeah. I think one of the things that funders really appreciate is the thoroughness and comprehension behind the approach and the considerations for even, like I said, the benefits cliff, where a parent might tell a child, you're not working in this house because if you get a job and I live under Section 8, your income will be reported towards my income and my rent will go up and I'll lose my SNAP benefits and on and on and on and on. And, when a funder hears that level of care, thought, right, they appreciate that, as well as when they hear things like, look, this isn't just about the empathy, which is what drives me, but there is a strong return on investment in contrast to where your tax dollars would go anyway to house a young person in the criminal justice system, or to pay into systems like Section 8, or to pay into systems like SNAP, in contrast to their lifetime projected earnings in the millions, which touches on macro and microeconomics. So there's a lot of things that they'd like to hear, and Derry said it, the authenticity behind the approach and the excitement behind the fact that this is a perfect storm, because while AI is going to displace people and also create jobs and have useful skills to connect people to employment, construction is not going anywhere. By 2031, 41% of the industry is going to be gone. It's going to present things like national security threats. Like, we have to get our workforce back up. So I think that level of industry knowledge as well as personal story and the connection for a funder is really successful, or has been, in fundraising thus far.
Amazing. And I think every single one of us here would much rather our tax dollars go to supporting job creation and people having life-sustaining wages for themselves for the rest of their lives, being productive citizens, than those other things. And both of you shared examples of that in those success stories, which was incredibly powerful. So opening it up for questions, I'm sure we have a lot. I've seen like 3 hands already. So if our mic runners can help with that, that would be great.
Let's start with you.
Oh, I talked to the square. Hi, Will, all of you, I love what you're doing. This is kind of a question/comment. I know based on some of what we were doing with the technology earlier, asking questions, what are the pain points for the employees, the employers? There was connectivity as an issue, vetting. Will, for you in particular, I wonder what you're doing to help on those 2 fronts with what you're doing. And I also wanted to flag, I'm in the interior design world now, and they don't necessarily always think, my previous role was more on corporate, in terms of that connectivity and the way we might think about it, or government, big opportunity there. I'll just give a quick plug. There is a program called Home Reimagined. It is being started by Wider Circle. It's up in Silver Spring. And it's about helping people who are facing furniture poverty. They don't have enough furniture in their homes to connect them with interior designers, builders, architects, etc., to rebuild that space within a day. And you plan ahead for that day. And we have some big magazines that we're pulling in to cover this, like Modern Luxury Magazine. But those employers are there. So it's a chance to network and connect. And they also feel like they're vetted because they've already been working with you. So I think we kind of need to look for more of those opportunities in some of the industries that just haven't had that vibe going yet. And I love what you're doing.
Thank you. And Wider Circle, I believe, is actually one of the employers for the Maryland Service Year program, and they hire members for the program. I think the way that we think about connectivity outside of our personal experiences, Build Within, we're still a lab, is what I call. We still do pre-apprenticeship programs. We run right now, for example, we're running a, project management association program, certification program. We still run apprenticeship programs. We're an intermediary with the Department of Labor ourselves, so we know what that process is like. So when we think about connectivity, we're thinking about how do you reduce manual tasks that lead to barriers ultimately at scale, right? So if you're working with 5 apprentices, 15 apprentices, yeah, you can hire 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people to do that. When we're talking about thousands of people and connecting them to opportunities, like we're doing with talentcapital.ai, that's a different story. You may want to, focus your resources on people to help make those connections, but then you're also getting into the question of the quality of services that are being provided to that person, right? One person may have more information than the other person. So how do you create a standard for that as well? So when we think about connectivity, we're thinking about standard, we're thinking about scale, but then we're also thinking about how do you best leverage those resources to actually have the greatest impact in any field. So whether that's the furniture, example, or whether that's Maryland, or whether that's talentcapital.ai, the way we have to think about this needs to shift from, okay, I can hire more people to do this, to I can actually do this really, really well if I spend X amount of dollars on this to make sure that we serve thousands of people to do this.
Great. Next question.
So I'm with the DC Workforce Investment Council, and one of the things that we do is policy. And you were talking about things like supportive services and wraparound services. And I've been thinking a lot about that with our policy person here. Can you talk a little bit about if you had the ability to make some recommendations around what policies could support some of this? I'm thinking, for instance, about supportive services. In DC, under WIOA, supportive services, the ceiling is $3,000. We know that that's not enough money these days when it comes to wraparound services and that sort of thing. So I'm trying to talk to folks about what makes sense. So if you had a magic wand and you started thinking about around supportive services and wraparound services, what are some things you'd like to see different in the policy?
Well, that's a great question. And believe it or not, that's the second magic wand question I've been asked in the past 2 days. I'm not even kidding. I'll give you an example in Virginia, maybe not in DC. Policy language going into executive action in regards to how money is being spent by people that are obtaining it, right, for these types of programs, to include language like X amount of dollars shall be used to, feed an individual or pay for driving school so they get a license. And I think that that's one idea, but that requires working with a lot of people, and that can get messy, as you know, for a number of reasons. But really just making sure it's in the language and having the right advocates at whatever level we need to in whatever state we're in, and going through the legislature or asking for executive action on it. It's a complex process, but I can tell you $3,000 isn't enough to pay for anything these days. You might not even be able to get something from McDonald's for that in a couple years. So we have to put language in that states that this money is being used for a specific reason, and then go through it that way. That's the only thing that really comes to mind. But if I did have a magic wand, you'd have a lot more than $3,000. I promise you that.
Amen.
So
I think we might have time for one more question. And I know I've seen this hand, but I don't know if there's been anyone over there as well. So can we Jack loop quickly so we can... Thank you for your patience.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Laurentis Gaines. I work with DC Public School Systems Central Office, and my role is to manage all apprenticeships, internships for quality and opportunities for the all high schools in DC. And my question is, understanding that AI is not going anywhere, how are you all partnering hands-on exposure with AI? How are you, or where is the intersection between the hands-on exposure and giving them the opportunity to learn and manage AI systems, understanding what Dr. Clower shared earlier, AI is taking the entry-level roles, right? So what does that intersectionality look like to prep them to be the forerunners in this AI world?
Okay, really quickly, I got a question for you. At Central Office, do you guys have minimum GPA requirements for those folks to get into your career pathways?
Yes.
that's a barrier and challenge. I understand that. It's unfortunate. I will say that in the construction industry, there's a couple things that we're leveraging AI for. Everything from training videos, right, to having young people understanding the intersection of like drones or robot dogs that are walking around and taking measurements of things, because there is going to be a cross sector and new skill sets develop.
I'll do this really quick. One, we have several pathways or apprenticeship roles that have been approved by DC and the U.S. Department of Labor. So data annotation, machine learning. Yes, we're limiting entry-level jobs, but there's entry-level jobs in AI that a lot of folks don't know that folks can get into as well. And so that intersection is also leveraging AI tools like data annotation, like creating LLMs, like leveraging cloud work and these cloud code like systems in the job that they're doing, so they get exposure with it early on.
Let's give a big round to our panel. Amazing.